Hi, welcome back. This is Effective Working in Accounting and Finance, which is also called S1.3, a course in CAT Stage 1. And this is chapter number 2, Personal Skills and Professional Presentation. Now, we're going to talk about an essential part of how to effectively work in finance and accounting. And this pertains personal skills and professional presentation. And we're going to talk about essential personal and communication skills. For you to be successful in finance and accounting, it's not only about numbers. You need also understand how to communicate effectively, the right behaviors to have at work, how to improve how you present information. It's not only about the information you have, it's also about how you present that information to your audience. And we are also going to look at how this is important for you in the finance role, in the accounting role, and how it is used at work, how it is used in offices, either in the private sector or in government positions. What are personal skills? And do we need to even consider personal skills in accounting and finance? These are skills that are related to managing yourself. In most cases, you are told how to manage others. In this case, we're now telling you need to understand how to manage yourself and how you should, and this influences how you work with others. Because you, in most cases, are not working in isolation, you work with others. And so if you are not a good team player, this can affect how others see you and maybe affect your career. It will also affect your behavior and the attitude at work. And these are very important for you as you progress with your work. And so it's very essential for you to understand that in any role in accounting and finance, you really need to understand how to manage yourself, how to work with others, the kind of right behavior and attitude that you need to demonstrate at work. They are generally called interpersonal skills in wider settings. Now, what are these common personal skills, or as we've seen previously, interpersonal skills? We have communication skills. How do you deliver information to others? Listening skills. Most of us are good at talking to others, but are you also good at listening? So we look at listening skills, for instance. Problem solving. People are usually good at stating out problems, but at work, you also need to be a problem solver to find solutions to problems. Cooperation and teamwork, very essential at work. Humans work with others. It is essential for you to understand how to collaborate with others, how to work with others. If people describe you as very difficult to work with, it will affect your chances of being promoted, of getting better opportunities, and people will not like working with you, which is not very good. Responsibility and reliability. Can your bosses, can your line managers, can your supervisors rely on you? Can you control yourself? Can you come to work on time? Can you deliver a piece of work on the deadline? Can you, or people need to watch you, people need to stay on you, people need to overly support you? Those are questions that we are going to answer in this chapter. Now, there is something we call soft skills and hard skills. Soft skills have to do with behaviors and attitude that people have to demonstrate in their places of work. It is essential that you understand how to work with others, communication and others, and those are usually called soft skills. We all need to have good soft skills to be able to succeed in our places of work. And then we have what we call hard skills. Hard skills are essentially your technical knowledge. What you are doing right now is you are obtaining hard skills. Why? Because you are undertaking a CAT course. You are obtaining technical information in accounting and finance, and we call that hard skills. For you to be a very good employee, for you to succeed at work, you need both. You need soft skills, you also need hard skills. A combination of those two makes you successful in your place of work. Now let's go back to one of those personal skills, which is communication. We are going to spend some time understanding what communication is. Communication is essentially delivering information from one person to another, or one group of people to another group of people. So at work, one of the main things you're going to be doing is delivering information, sharing information amongst yourselves or maybe with other stakeholders. This information can be written or it can be verbal in a meeting, in a presentation. Now, why do we deliver information? Because we need to inform others. We need to request something from others. We need to confirm information if our supervisors have requested us to do so. And also, communication helps us work smoothly. Now, it is essential that information that you are delivering is clear and correct. We're going to see more on that in the next slides. Again, why do we communicate at work? I think I had alluded to it, but let me reiterate on it. We give information, we request actions for others to perform certain actions. We persuade or explain information to others where it is required. Sometimes our supervisors or other stakeholders may request us to confirm information, to explain information, or to help them understand information, and also to help us build relationships. For instance, the sales and marketing department are going to communicate with the external world, the public, potential customers, to build relationships, maybe even suppliers, to build relationships for the company to run smoothly. Because for the company to run smoothly, stakeholders must be working smoothly. They must have a sort of relationship. And that is cemented by effective communication. Now, this is a typical communication process. Essentially, a sender, in this case maybe you, the accountant, you send information. You send a message. To whom? To a receiver. Okay? You send this information to a receiver. But between you and the receiver, there is potential for noise. And noise are essentially anything that might distract this information. Anything that may make this information to get to the receiver in a way that you don't want. So, and essentially the receiver also gives you feedback. And this feedback might be verbal or even facial expressions. You might deliver bad information or sad information, and you see someone whose face really getting sad. That's feedback that the receiver has given you. And this feedback shows that the receiver has understood the message that you have delivered. So communication, effective communication, is a two-way street. It is a two-way process. We deliver a message and we get feedback, either verbally or through body language. How do you communicate effectively? Communicating is one thing, but we should always ensure that the way we communicate to receivers, to our audience, is effective. We should use simple and correct English. In this case, if you're delivering in English, but if it is in Kinyarwanda or in any other language, ensure that the language you are using is very simple to understand for your audience, but also correct. Try and avoid jargon. Remember, we are accountants or finance professionals. We're delivering information that might be complicated for other people. Financial information, numbers. Try to simplify that information in a way that is understandable for your audience in case they are not from this world, in case they are not accountants, in case they never did CAT like you. And also try and be very clear, direct. Yeah? Do not do what we call beating around the bush. Yeah, be very clear and direct, and make sure that if this is a report, your grammar, your spelling is spot on. Avoid simple mistakes, reckless mistakes. And before you deliver your message, have a think about your audience. Who is your audience? Are these fellow financial professionals, or are these people who don't have very good understanding of CAT or complicated financial information? And try to package your message in a way that is going to be understandable to your audience. Now, how do you make sure that your message is correct? Because before we look at how you deliver the message, we are going to look at whether your message is actually correct. Because if it is technically incorrect, then you have lost your audience. You must ensure that your message is technically correct. If it is a financial report, have you checked your arithmetic calculations to ensure they are correct? Are your numbers correct? Is it suitable for the user? And also, is it going to support the user to make decisions? This is essential, because without checking for this, no matter how you present your information, whether you are very simple, whether you are direct, everything else we've said, if the message is not correct, then it just misses the whole point. So as an accountant, as a finance professional, always check your numbers, always check your technical information to ensure that it is free from errors and bias. Now, to put ice on the cake, I have to emphasize that your information needs to be short and simple. That's the key message here. Always try to present your financial information in a way that is simple and short. Short sentences, simple words, no unnecessary details. Avoid slangs. Slangs, we also call them jargons. Sometimes, yeah? And of course, make sure that it's delivered in a way that saves time at work. Now, sometimes we might be required to present information that is visual, yeah, or verbal. Visual means there are diagrams, charts, yeah, tables. Sometimes words, of course, words explain the meaning of the information that you are providing. However, in some other cases, you might be required to present information using a table. And the table simply is supposed to help you organize numbers. Charts, on the other hand, show usually comparisons, maybe between different years. Visuals make reports clearer. Remember, one picture might be worth or more than 1,000 words. So some information is better presented in images or visuals. So it is very important for you to understand this message I want to deliver. Is it better delivered in words, in tables, in charts, or visuals? Each of these serves a different purpose. Now, let's talk about something else, something called a professional image. In our places of work, we are required to have some professional image. And the professional image can be from the institution side or your personal side. From the professional side, an institutional side, we call it corporate image. For you, as a staff, as an individual, we call it an individual image. Either way, we all need to have some image, professional image. And what is it? It is essentially how others see you at work. If someone asked and they said, "Can you tell me about you?" How would they describe you? That's your image. And it is affected by your appearance, physical appearance. How do you dress? How do you speak to others? How do you relate with others? It is very essential in finance for us to have a professional, good image. Now, I say that there are two types of professional image. There is what we call a corporate image, and there is also an individual image. Now, from the corporate perspective, a corporate image is essentially how the public sees a company. Does the public see this company as a good institution, bad institution, effective, not effective, cares for customers, does not care for customers, smart, not smart? How does the public see you? That's a corporate image. So their opinion. And this can be shaped by various things, but various ways on how you conduct your business. For instance, your logo, the colors you use. For instance, every time you see yellow in Rwanda, one of the things you probably think about is MTN, for instance. There might be other colors that you can associate with other companies, for instance. That is something we call a corporate image. Communication must also follow some house rules. You have seen that many companies use certain fonts with how they communicate. This creates some consistency, and people now know what to expect. Sometimes, if you create enough consistency, people will look at some words, they look at some visuals, and they will know this is this company before they even see the logo or an official from that company, because you've created some consistency. Now let's talk about personal image. We looked at professional image or corporate image. For you as an individual, you need to be very clean at work. You cannot get to work when you are dirty. Okay, you need to be very clean visually. You need to have very good body language. Okay, be respectful at work. Respect your colleagues. Respect your bosses. Build trust. If you're given work to do, do it. If you said you're going to do something, do it. That's how you create trust. Okay, and this is very important, especially when you're interacting with clients. Now, why do we need to build business relationships? Because, actually, how do you do that? You need to respect colleagues and clients, okay? Respecting does not mean you cannot disagree, but you just need to make sure that you respect each other at work. If you are interacting with others, try to be polite, okay, and professional. Build trust over time, and we've seen that, for instance, how you build trust. Avoid conflict language, or what we usually call provocative language. It does not mean you cannot have a disagreement with someone, but you just need to make sure you do it in a way that does not create unnecessary conflict. This is very essential, especially when you are dealing with teams. In some cases, you might be required to communicate formally or informally. So what's the difference? Formal communication is essentially when you are writing information or communicating information by the book, by the rules. In other cases, actually, in most cases, we communicate informally at work. Whether it is formal or informal, make sure you are polite at work. You avoid slangs, okay, at work, because not everyone may understand your slangs. Use full sentences. Make sure you use a tone that is tuned to the business that you are dealing with. And try to be more than when you are chatting with your friends at home. Now, let's look at how do you choose communication methods. We have various communication methods. For instance, we have face-to-face, we have telephone, email, letters, reports. How do you choose the right one? Face communication is used especially for sensitive issues. For instance, you have sensitive information you have to deliver, then you have to actually talk to people face-to-face, especially when it's possible. Telephone, someone is geographically far from you, you might want to pick a phone and deliver information, especially if it is a quick information or quick feedback. Emails are usually used to keep records, because remember, face-to-face, there is no written evidence. Data are usually used for formal information, formal reports, formal matters, and the reports are usually used to deliver detailed information that you cannot simply summarize in a meeting or something like that. Now, let's talk about informal business reports. In most cases in an organization, employees, and maybe you, are going to be required to prepare some reports which are not essentially too formal. These reports are used for less complex tasks, and they can be written and structured. They should be very easy to read to avoid complicated language. No heavy referencing, because this is an informal type report, and they are usually used internally in a company. So you need to start learning how to, in your textbook, in this textbook, for this book, you will find some examples and formats of reports, letters, memos, and other types of communication. So please grab your book, either from your teacher, from your school, and familiarize yourself with different formats of these channels of communication, because you will be required to use them in your place of work. Now, an informal report has usually 7 sections. You have the title, a summary of your report, an introduction that actually introduces the user to your report, the main body, the message that you're delivering, the main message, your conclusions and recommendations, and then appendices. Appendices is essentially where you put maybe long tables and data that you don't want to put in the main report. Now, we say that these can be other channels of communication that you can use. And as I said, grab your textbook and look at some formats on letters, memos, and emails. Now, we say that letters are usually for external purposes. Memos are usually for internal purposes between maybe one department to another department. Emails are usually the most common type of communication. People use electronic emails. Okay, some of you are familiar with, for instance, platforms such as Gmail, okay, Yahoo, and Proton Mail, for instance, and other types of electronic messages platform. And every company has what we call house rules. The rules, maybe your email needs to have a signature, it needs to have dear so and so, it needs to have sign off, which is maybe like yours faithfully or something like that. Once you get a job, you need to familiarize yourself with the rules within that company and try to use them every time you use any of these formats, and try to be professional when you're using these types of communication with either internally or externally. So now let's talk about presentation. How do you present your information? These are some of the standards. Your presentation needs to be neat, it needs to be smart, it needs to be the right layout, proper headings, good diagrams, as well as correct grammar. And of course, the way you present it, the layout itself, the way you are presenting yourself as well when you're presenting this information is essential. At your place of work, you're going to be required sometimes to present information. You need to familiarize yourself with the right format that your organization uses and use it when you're delivering a presentation. Now, something I should mention is, although we don't have numbers, computations in this module, in this course, many of the other modules in CAT have computations. So you are required to understand basic numeracy skills, basic computational skills. The usual things you study in previous classes, for instance, in O level, in primary school. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Go and revise those things. Understand how to do communication. You don't only need them for your examination, but at work, you're going to use these skills to do your job. Now, in some cases, you might be required to use percentages, fractions, and they will use these, for instance, to compute salaries, pay as you earn, deductions. It is very essential for you to understand and familiarize yourself with these to be able to do your job appropriately. Now, in other cases, you are going to be required to use diagrams and the charts either for your examination or for your job. Now, understand when to use each. Diagrams make information clearer and they summarize information more visible, okay? More easy to understand in some cases. Tables usually organize numbers in a way that is easily accessible to the user. Bar charts compare amounts, for instance, in different years. Pie charts show proportions. Percentages, for instance, this has this percentage, this has this percentage. These are very, very common ways of presenting information in reports, at work, and maybe even in your examination. So please familiarize yourself with how to use each of these, especially with a computer, for instance, when you're doing your job. Now, before we end this chapter, you might be used to this from chapter number 1. Pause this video and get a piece of paper and a pen and try to read the question and try to attempt it. How you answer it is you read the question, you look at the multiple choices, and you write down whether your answer is A or B or C or D. Remember, you do not write, if for instance you choose A, do not write communication skills. Simply write A and then do it for question 1 or question 2. Now, question 1 says, a finance officer explains payroll procedures to non-accounting staff. Which skill is most important? A, communication skills. B, numeracy skills. C, auditing skills. And D, tax calculation. Think about what we've said and try to choose the best option and write it down on your paper. Question 2, a manager needs to inform all staff about a new dress code. Which method is best? A, telephone calls. B, face-to-face interviews. C, notes board or intranet. An intranet is an internal internet service that is used by a company to share information. And D is informal chat, informal conversation. Again, pause the video and write down your answers. Once you're done, you can now unpause the video, play the video again to see the answers next. Right, I hope you were able to write your answers and maybe you got them right, maybe one of them. And if you didn't get them right, you still have to go back, play the video again, or grab your textbook and try to revisit the content. For question number 1, the correct answer is communication skills, because this finance officer needs to explain information in a clear verbal communication. For question number 2, this information needs to be delivered using notes board or intranet because there is need to keep an audit trail, to keep evidence of the information that was shared, but also to ensure that it reaches staff who may be physically in the company or outside the company. If you didn't understand why we chose A or C, reach out to your teacher. Ask your teacher to explain why these are correct answers. And also, as I said previously, go to the ICPAR website and download more questions that you can exercise, practice, and boost your chances of passing this paper. Now, we have seen how to answer some of these questions. Let's remind ourselves the key topics that we have seen in this chapter. We talked about personal and soft skills and why they matter. We talked about the right attitude at work, communication skills, listening, and other skills that you need to be able to collaborate with others. We talked about communication, we talked about building a professional image, whether from the institutional perspective or for you as an individual. How others describe you, how they see you, and why that is essential for you and your career. And for you to be able to use the right format for the information that you need to present. Are you going to use a table, a chart, a graph, for instance? What diagram? Are you going to use a letter, a memo, a report? Okay? You need to understand the information you need to present and who you are going to present it to and the right channel of communication. And for you to understand the rules of communication within your entity, within your employer, within your company, and to use them appropriately when you're delivering information. Thank you.